Welcome everybody to session 2 of our series on living the truth. It's good to see so many faces for this series and see some people that I haven't seen for a while, which is great to see you back. So it's I just love it when people make the journey back again. So just a bit of a review about what we're doing with this series. We've spent, so many weeks for the last series looking at, realizing the truth of no self. So realizing our true nature and the true nature of reality. That's really been the focus for the last numerous months. So now we're kind of shifting into a new beginning, you could say. Now that once there's a realization that we're not really who we thought we were, we're not this egoic self, this collection of thoughts, these processes, psychological processes and thoughts, emotions is not who we are. Once we realize that truth, and the truth of reality, how do we live that truth? And this is really what the practice is all about. It's not about realizing the truth and it's over. In fact, often we have that conception that once I'm enlightened, I won't have any problems. It's sometimes seen as a way to fix things. And really it's not about having no problems. Although that may occur, or it may be that problems are no longer seen as a problem, maybe a more accurate way to put it. That may be part of how you live the truth. But we're looking at this in a broader way. How do these realizations become embodied in the way that our humanity unfolds? So how are we authentic in life to live the realizations of our true nature? And you'll find, as realizations arise and insights arise, life just has this way of continually giving us what we need, providing opportunities to live than what we have realized. And it just happens that way. I don't know why. Life just seems to have that flow to it, that where we're in a way challenged to live what we've realized. So living what is true is really about saying yes to life as it is. And that's what I was really pointing to in that guided meditation, is being open and allowing life as it is, being present for it as it naturally unfolds. So we're so used perhaps to living our life from something that is not true, right? From fear, from a sense of control, an agenda, struggling with what is, that push-pull of grasping for more of what we want, the pleasant, and pushing away what we don't want, what I call kind of struggling with the natural unfolding of life. So we're used to this in many ways. It's kind of a me and another situation where there's this separation, division between us and even within ourselves, a sense of division. So living the truth is what I'm calling this series, is really about closing the gap between what we've realized and how we live our lives. If I could put it in a sentence, It's about closing this gap, and you'll see this gap. It arises in our lives. It's this gap between seeing the truth of that we're not this egoic self, and how the gap between that and how we are in the world. We may not always live as if that's true, even though we know it. There may be this gap. And the way I see it, living the truth is really living from the unknown mystery, rather than living from the known. So we're letting go of control, letting go of our agendas, and we're being free and open with life unfolding. And that's what I was really, again, pointing to in our guided meditation. So you could say it's love, and love for the truth that closes the gap. So it's not personal will that closes the gap. It's not an egoic will that closes the gap. It's really love. In fact, it's the opposite of personal will. It's a willingness to be open and saying yes, non-negotiable yes. So that's a bit of a review about what the series is all about. And we'll just kind of go through this bit by bit, and I'm sort of kind of what arises, partly for what arises for me during the week, or if people have particular challenges, or they notice how this gap is manifesting in their life, then that can be a potential topic for a session. So the numbers of this is one series that could go endlessly, because this gap shows up in all kinds of different ways. I'm going to try to pick the more common ways and kind of build a foundation, but it really can go on for some time, where this gap gets closed. So today I'm looking at this, what I'm calling being truthful. And I kind of see this being truthful as the foundation for living the truth. It's the place really to start in living the realized truth of your true nature, is to tell the truth, to be honest and sincere, to be truthful. So this idea of not lying, not stating falsehoods is throughout the teachings. It's the teachings of the Buddha in particular. It's within right speech, which is one of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. So within right speech, it's one of the elements is abstaining from lying, from divisive speech, from abusive speech, from idle chatter. So you see, that truthfulness is very much a part of right speech, which is a key component of the Eightfold Path. It's also the fourth precept. I don't know if people are familiar with the five. The Buddha had these five basic precepts for general, kind of the general population to undertake, to train with and work with. So they're not really commandments in the same way that we might find in Christianity. They're more like mindfulness trainings. Is one way to look at it, that we have these as aspirations. We work with them. We notice when we're not practicing them. So that it's just the precept is, the fourth precept is simply either stated as refraining from lying or abstaining from false speech. So this is, very much a part of spiritual traditions, including the teachings of the Buddha. So I'd be curious how, this is, you could say, an elemental aspect. It's also a very deep aspect, as we'll perhaps discover, that if people are coming to a Thursday night meditation group like this, perhaps has had some practice with it. So just want to put a question out to you, how this practicing with this precept, however you are, this part of the Noble Eightfold Path, or however, whatever even other spiritual tradition you might, because it's within all of them really, how it's played out for you as a kind of a lived practice, because there's nuances to this. It's you could say it, but there's I've discovered all these kinds of ways that it gets lived out. It gets lived as a practice. So I'd be curious, kind of how it's played out for you, what challenges you've perhaps had as you've worked with it, what you discovered, what was revealed as you practiced with this aspect of practice. So I'll just put that out for the group for some comments, some dialogue. Jason.
Just a brief comment. I think that one difficulty that I find is truth is I sometimes find it can be really difficult to convey the truth as I see it, or to understand the truth as another person sees it, because there's just so many layers of stuff that both of us have. I'm assuming the other people have stuff too, not just me. So yeah.
Okay. Yes, Marie.
One thing I find difficult too is if somebody asks me a question about themselves, and if the truthful answer would be hurtful for them, I find it very difficult to be direct, and totally truthful. I often answer less than truthfully, I think, when I'm confronted with that situation. And I've had a hard time figuring out how to be honest and not be unkind or hurtful, even when I'm asked a direct question by a friend, say, for example. So I've struggled with that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that balance. Well, there's another precept about non-harming. So, and then there's the teachings around compassion. So how do you balance, somebody says, how do you like my new outfit? Or how do you like my, sorry, whatever it is, right? And you think it's hideous. But it may not be, so there may be another way to say that, say something that is truthful, but not as hurtful as saying, it's hideous. Yeah. Yeah, Micah.
One of the interesting things I've noticed with like sort of practicing right speech is you don't really notice when you're being really good at it. It's when you've strayed. It's like, oh, no, this isn't like, this isn't good. This isn't appropriate, or this isn't helpful at this time. And yeah, so it's kind of a tough one to reinforce the positive, because you're not noticing it unless you're being abject, like completely against.
Yeah, we feel the division when we're not truthful, right? The separation that it causes and the division inside, but we may not, as you're saying, feel the sense of oneness or the sense of non-division as much when things are flowing. Truth is just being. Yeah. Thank you. So how do we embody, I guess you could say, the most truthful experience of our relative life, in our humanity? How do we embody that? So in order to begin to embody our realizations about truth, we can start by being consciously truthful, actually, to others, but also to ourselves. So there's kind of two aspects of it, because it's amazing how often we deceive ourselves. And it's just an interesting practice. And it's, you don't even have to be with somebody else to do this practice. You can just be watching the mind and little deceptions, rationalizations, whatever, that we engage in internally. And the other way that I look at it is truthfulness arises not only through our speech, but I believe it also comes through listening. That was pointed to, that somebody else may have a different truth for them. So, but we can listen to other people's truths. Be open to listening, perhaps discovering something new in the listening. So there's kind of those four aspects: this, being truthful to others and to ourselves, and practicing it through our speech and through our listening. So this is a practice that we can engage in. Try, being truthful all the time for a day. Try just being, just practicing with that, this aspiration to be truthful for an entire day, and you'll be surprised how challenging it is. You might be surprised by how challenging it is, and you might be surprised how revealing it is as well. Just doing it for one day. I like these kind of things where you just take an element of practice and then do it for a day or a couple of days. I did this with the no gossiping one, where you don't talk about somebody that's not present. Because there's a part of right speech is not to gossip. Is the word that gets translated. I realized how much I actually talk about people that aren't present. I did this practice years ago, and I thought, wow, I think half of my speech is actually gossip. It was very, very revealing. And same with the truth telling. I recognized all kinds of nuances, little things I did, especially with the children, with our son, our firstborn son. So I was, doing these kinds of practices, and he had real sugar, loved sugar, like candy and ice cream and all this stuff. And so, to manage that, I realized I'm lying to the young lad all the time. Like I'm deceiving him in all these different ways. Like, no, we don't have any. There's no candy in the cupboard, and of course there is. And so I started to realize that I was doing this, and we actually told Justin that yogurt was ice cream, because he had heard of this thing called ice cream is wonderful, and he'd say, I want ice cream. And so we'd say, okay, here you go. We'd give him yogurt, and he'd go, oh yeah, and he'd eat up his yogurt. And this worked, of course, until he went to a birthday party and had real ice cream and realized to him there was just different types of ice cream, and he wanted the good stuff, not the stuff that we get. But so he just started to realize and of course the rationalization is that this is for his health and for his well-being and so on and so forth. But it really became a practice to find other ways to be truthful, but to also be caring about his health and his well-being. So to explain about these different foods, and how some foods are better for you than other foods, and and how you can eat too much of any food, and so just to be truthful. So it became a real practice for me in those early years with our children. So it's not so easy. That's what I discovered, and it's very revealing. It's also very revealing. So we might be surprised how often we bend the truth. Just a little bit, right? Seems very innocent almost. Just kind of bending it just a little bit, or giving a kind of a partial truth. And it could be out of fear. It could be about wanting to control an outcome, control an event. So this house that I'm giving this talk from is in Mount Tremblant, where we just listed it for sale. So we're talking to the real estate agent. And the house has some warts, like any house, right? It's not so they, the real estate agent almost became like, don't tell me anymore, because she'd ask me, well, is there anything wrong in this room? And I'd just go, well, that's broken, and that there was a hole there, and I patched it, but if you look really closely, it does. And she's going like, no, don't tell me, don't tell me any more truth. So she stopped asking. But I just, if you ask me if there's something wrong, I was going to tell her that this is wrong with the house. So it, I didn't want to bend the truth in any way. So it's I can think back to other houses where I would kind of bend the truth. Well, yeah, no, there's that's fine, and nothing really. There's really no big issue, and just kind of glossing over perhaps some deficiencies with the house. So there might be a desire to control, or there might be a desire not to be vulnerable in the way that to protect ourselves, and in bending the truth a little. So the practice is just to kind of continually notice these ways that we might bend the truth, or sugarcoat it, or rationalize what we say in different ways. So that's a kind of basic element of the practice, and not to kind of berate ourselves when we find that we did bend the truth. The very fact that one notices it is a key aspect of the practice. It's being conscious, and then you can begin again and practice with truthfulness again and again. So what is truth in this sense? So I'm not talking here about absolute truths like your true nature or the nature of reality. I'm not talking about that in this that of absolute truths. I'm talking about the relative truths, how we live our lives in the world and with other people. So what is truth? It's not opinions and views. It's not our conditioned ideas and projections. So it's not about sharing our judgments and opinions and being right about our opinions and judgments. It's really about being precisely honest, is how I look at it. Being precisely honest in our communication and being open to having your truth change. So it's not about being right and holding on to views and opinions. It's about being precisely honest and also being open to what is perhaps what's true for another person. Of course, I don't go around engaging with, conspiracy theorists, and but I do engage in, dialogue around issue with people that don't have the same kinds of ways of viewing the world. I have many friends that don't view, have the same kind of perhaps viewpoints that I might be inclined towards. And I'm always learning something from them. They're compassionate, warm-hearted people, different life experiences and causes and conditions coming together, forming different ways of engaging in the world. So it's about being honest and sincere in our communication with others and ourselves. And as I said, it's very revealing to do this. And it's also about listening. I'll say a bit more about that. Mark Nepo, a quote from Mark Nepo: "To listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear." To listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. So it's just this kind of pure quality of openness and receptivity. So in that sense, we really become, we talk about presence, touch into your beingness or your presence. We become presence itself, where we're receptive and open in our listening. And you may notice, well, there's sometimes we're not listening at all. We're actually waiting for the other person to stop talking so that we can jump in and make our point. So we're noticing that, when somebody is speaking, are you totally engaged in what they're saying, or are you thinking about, what you're going to say and how you're going to counter how you're going to counter what they're saying. So when we're in that kind of open presence, that place of listening, we can really respond to the life that's there in front of us. And really respond to the life that's there. And I find that this kind of presence, deep presence and listening really opens what I call the big heart. It opens that the loving relatedness, relating lovingly from the place of the big heart. When we're not listening to the mind chatter. Right, that's when the big heart comes online. You notice that when there's a little bit of quiet in the mind, what comes online? It's very interesting to notice that. What comes online when we settle into the present moment? A bit of quiet arises. The big heart comes online, that sense of loving presence, that relatedness. And that can come online just by listening. Listening is a beautiful practice, and a big part, I think, of being truthful. That's what came out in my practice, at least, was how important listening was to being able to speak my truth. So as soon as you let go of planning what you're going to say next, you enter a state of not controlling, right? You're no longer controlling. You're just open. Now this can feel, very vulnerable to the ego, right? The ego will have all kinds of, may come up with a few reasons why this is not a good idea. Right? The ego's very good at that, I'm not going to give you any examples because I'm sure you're familiar with them, but why it's because it's so vulnerable, there will likely be some resistance from the ego. So listening really means letting go of that control. Right? And and then the big heart can come online when we're listening, when we listen and we're being listened to. You notice how it feels when somebody truly listens to what you're saying. So when you're listening and being listened to, what happens? There's a deep connection. A heart-to-heart connection. So not separation. You see your true nature, your true presence is what's manifesting. And there's a lessening of fear, right? Because there could be some understanding in that connection. Some understanding in that connection. I think this is very timely too. And I don't want to get off topic too much, but I think this is very timely with the kind of political divisions that are present right now that seem to be just getting worse and worse. And that I think it's the ability, the skill of being able to listen and encourage others to listen is very much needed today. And it's a demanding and a very real practice. So just, but I invite you to give it a try. We almost also, and this was brought up by Maureen, we also are truthful, but also balancing that with compassion. So it might not always be appropriate to be brutally direct. You know, telling your partners that his or her outfit is hideous, for, you know, as the example I gave, would be an example of brutally direct. There may be another way to say it. You know, it's the, what did I say once? It's not important what I think, it's how you feel. Her response was, "You don't like it, do you?" You know, so much. I tried though, right? I was so speaking truth in a different way, but ultimately, after 40 years of marriage, it's pretty tough to not be read at a very deep level. Not just for my views to be known, my unconscious views. So we're bringing this element of compassion, of non-harming, to how we engage in this practice. So we kind of approach it like a bit of an adventure. See what you come up with. I want to. The aspiration is to be truthful. And I've also got these other influences and balancing factors that I bring to this practice. So it will transform you. This very simple practice, it can be very transformative. Life is unfolding according to what is true, not according to what the little me wants. And so when you start flowing with the truth of life as it's unfolding, there is this diminishment of division, a sense of division within. Because you can't really authentically live your realization of truth and be deceitful and dishonest at the same time. This is not possible. Right? Because when you're dishonest, there's a disconnect between your realizations, you know, what is ultimately true, and how your humanity is manifesting. So again, test this out for yourself. As I always say, don't believe what I tell you. You got to really go out and test this. See if it is transformative. You know, I can think back, you know, when I first heard this as a young man, the precepts, the ego just went, oh my God, that sounds like commandments, and I don't want this and this. It was just all kinds of resistance, right? And, how can this be transformative? It's, you know, and you know, so it may not be at first light seem like it's transformative, but it is incredibly transformative. But you need to test this out for yourself. You know, what is the truth behind your intentions? Looking at that. So the thing that truth gives you is a singular aim. There's no division. Your relative life can unfold in harmony with unity, with oneness. No division. And as I said, it's not something you just do with others. It's just also about being truthful to yourself. Very challenging to notice when you're deceiving yourself. One way to notice is non-division internally. So when truth and your humanity are in harmony, what I call non-division, you'll feel like there's more space or more quiet present. A stillness or silence is present. And when there's more quiet, as I said, there's access to the big heart, to the true heart. True heart comes online. So you could say this truth and love are the kind of most important tools for living an enlightened life, for living your realizations. So accessing truth. So I'd like to open it up for some questions. I have some more kind of examples. It's you can kind of play around with these examples of how this challenges us in our or reveals things about our how we're living. But I'll open it up for some questions and comments or more sharing on your part. Yeah, Juna.
At work, we try to train people how to give performance development feedback. And it's really, really hard. And a lot of employees will say, I don't trust anybody telling me what's good because they never tell me what I'm not good at. And they're hungry for this feedback. And yet, I was thinking about it when Maureen was talking, it's a very vulnerable, uncomfortable place to come out and say, this is my view of you, and it's not all positive. And here's where I think you could do better. It's a huge challenge in relationships at work. But I had an experience of a boss many years ago that I've never forgotten. He and I both interviewed for jobs on this new team that was being put together. And he's a total rock star, and he hit it out of the park, and they wanted him right away. And there were several of us also interviewing for roles on the team. And he sat down with me before all the decisions had been made. And he's a very kind person. He's very kind. You never doubt that about him, that he's kind-hearted and that's his intention. But he basically told me, I completely bombed the interview and they were not going to offer me a job. And they told him that because they thought they wanted him to be the leader. And I remember, I could take it in. I'm surprised at that, and I've never forgotten the experience that he had the courage to say that. But there was a way that he didn't make it he didn't add anything like, oh my God, this is awful. I'm going to tell you this thing that's really painful. Mm-hmm. Even though, of course, he must have known it would be, right? To tell somebody you completely bombed this interview. And I've never forgotten that experience. It truly was, I don't know if I can say transformative, but it made me feel much closer to him and to try to remember that when I'm thinking about giving someone some feedback that might be painful or might be, negative, or they might see it as negative. How can I say this in a way that at least doesn't add anything? Can I have my full intention that I'm trying to help this person grow and trying to say it in a way that doesn't harm them, as opposed to avoiding it or sugarcoating it, saying, no, you did great in the interview. You're going to be amazing. what actually happened was when they told him that they weren't going to offer me the job because they knew he knew me, he actually went to bat for me and argued and said, like, you know, argued on my behalf, and they ended up offering me a job because of that. And it's been an amazing opportunity. It was like, I don't know, 15 years ago. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, just to comment on that, it's so much about our intentions. If our intention is truthful, coming from truth. So what we're saying is really wanting to help this person grow and understand, right? It's different than if it's more personal, right? If it's got another motivation behind it, there wouldn't be trust. So there's a lot more to it than just offering a shit sandwich, as they say, right? You know, there's a, if you know what I mean, that's a saying for you give some positives mixed in with some negative feedback. So there's a lot more to it than that, to having that element of trust that is there, and that's based, I think, on the intention, where it's coming from. And your example really illustrated that.
Hello, Stephen.
No.
So I've just been thinking and pondering about the righteousness behind truth. So I'll speak for myself. I am a very truthful person. I, in fact, just had a discussion with a family member today who said that I'm too honest. You're too honest, Joanna. You're too honest. You just brush things off. You're too honest. And that irritated me. And I wondered if it's because I was annoyed that that person isn't honest. Why should that even bother me? Have I self-identified as Joanna, the honest person? And so there's a bit of righteousness about it. Do I always act in honesty because that's who I am? And I think, like, so a lot of times, especially with COVID, I try to be considerate. So I don't just follow the rules because that's what the rules are, because of the rules. I just try to be considerate of the community around me. So that's one instance. But sometimes, you know, I think that maybe I'm just honest because that's who I've self-identified as. Are there two different types of honesty? I guess there are. So I'm not really sure if this is a question as much as just a because I don't know where my honesty comes from, but I guess what tends to bother me is when I'm honest and somebody else is not. And why should that bother me if I'm just secure with what I'm doing? So yeah, just a lot to unpack there, but that's just my thoughts as you're talking. The righteousness, is it okay to identify with our honesty and our truth? Is that me, Joanna, the honest person, or is it something that I do? When somebody is dishonest, are they acting in a dishonest way, or are they a dishonest person? Is that what bothers me, because I now have labeled the person as X, the dishonest person, versus X who has done the dishonest thing? I don't know. I'm just thinking about that as you're talking. Just, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Oh, good. My snoring cat left. That's good. So I can unmute myself. Yes, I'll look at this from the perspective of the Eightfold Path, since seems to be quite relevant. You know, the speech, the action, and so forth. And when I think about action or speech, I try to get some clarity for myself, thinking about that, the action or the speech, in the context of everything else. You mentioned compassion, Stephen, but all of the 8 spokes. So, right view, right action. Actually, you mentioned right intent, right view, right action, right concentration, right mindfulness. Try to bring it all together to guide, if it is the speech or the action. And that sometimes, as was mentioned, also means renunciation or withholding some of the facts, some of the knowledge that we have. I'm thinking, for example, very recently I ended up in an emergency department in a hospital. Nothing serious, it was nothing. But then when I spoke with my 88-year-old mother, I withheld that. I didn't tell her that. And that's because I try to look at everything. You mentioned compassion, but the Eightfold Path is also it's like guidance when I look at one aspect in the context of everything else, and then when I need a little bit more clarity, I try to synthesize that into what releases suffering, what brings less suffering, and that usually is an easier way for me to get that clarity in the moment. I don't succeed all the time, but it's pretty easy for me to see that if I say something to my mother in that case, I know her, she will suffer. So that to me meant, okay, don't hold that back. So I'm not saying really anything new here. I'm just talking about my own experience and how I try to approach this subject of trying to live truthfully, which doesn't always mean being direct, saying everything. It's putting everything together, and from that flows hopefully something that is truthful.